Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. I'd like to start things off with a few announcements. First, we will be recording this session and sending it out to you later today. Second, please feel free to submit questions at any time during the session in the chat or Q&A feature. Everyone will be on mute during the session except for our speakers. So feel free at any time to send in those questions and we will answer them in the order they were received. With that, I'll go ahead and pass things over to you, Jason.
All right, thanks, Petra. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us. Great to have you back to the webinar. If this is your first, we welcome you. My name is Jason Skidmore. I'm with Vernovis. On behalf of Vernovis and the Columbus Collaboratory, we want to welcome you to this fourth part in our Cybersecurity E-Series. Today, we're just really going to be doing an open interview of our cybersecurity experts, where you will have an opportunity to ask them anything that's on your mind, any sort of security concern that you may have right now. I'll start with some really brief introductions of our companies and the folks that you see in front of you here today. Vernovis is a staffing and solutions provider focused in technology, cybersecurity, and accounting and finance. Through this model, we can both staff up your existing teams with talent to complete your most critical projects, or bring in our team of seasoned experts to drive to the outcomes you're looking for. Our solutions practice is growing and has core capabilities in the areas of business continuity, network and cloud architecture, Active Directory and group policy, and of course, cybersecurity. Our cybersecurity vertical is built around a virtual CISO model designed to advise and assist companies to build, administer, and maintain a strong cybersecurity program. We're really pleased to continue to showcase our budding partnership and friends at the Columbus Collaboratory. The Collaboratory was founded by 7 of Columbus's largest corporations in order to provide trusted cybersecurity and artificial intelligence solutions that would help them reduce costs and increase their protection. Their cybersecurity capabilities include security program assessments, operationalizing MITRE ATT&CK, vulnerability management solutions, strategic and tactical cyber threat intelligence sharing, and adversarial emulations. And I can tell you firsthand, these guys are doing some real great, cool stuff over at the Collaboratory. So thanks for being a part of this with us. I'm going to give really brief intros of our panelists today so that we can jump right in and get started here. But we have Kevin Jackson. Kevin is the CISO with Vernovis. Thanks for being here, Kevin. Jeff Schmidt, who's Vice President and Chief Cybersecurity Innovator at the Columbus Collaboratory. And Troy Vennon, who is Director of Security Innovation at the Columbus Collaboratory as well. And then, of course, last but certainly not least, our friend Ben Blanquera, who's Vice President, Client Success and Experience with the Columbus Collaboratory. So if you've joined us before, you've been able to hear these guys attack some very specific topics, ranging from business continuity to vulnerability management, and several other topics. So today we're going to kind of open it up a little bit. So before I launch in, I'm going to start with a few questions to our group here, and just to kind of get things warmed up. But if you're on the call right now, please go ahead and start to load your questions into that Q&A box. We'll be happy to start grabbing those and fielding those over to the guys as you think of them, and keep things moving along. So very informal today. And I'll get us launched here. So guys, please, all three of you feel free to jump in. Kevin, I'll direct the first one at you, and then we can let Jeff and Troy tag on as well. But I think a lot of folks, you know, as we've sort of prepared for this, and as I've talked to a lot of folks out there, current state is very different than it was just a short time ago. You guys work with so many different organizations in terms of their cybersecurity program and specific tactical things they're doing within it. What are you seeing? What are the top concerns that companies have today, and how have those evolved? So Kevin, I'll start with you and we'll just kind of go from there.
Great, thanks Jason, and thanks everyone. Glad to be here. A great opportunity to tag this open forum on to the end of our series. Yeah, there are obviously so many discussions going on right now that directly relate to the mass work from home environment that almost the entire world is managing right now. And there are a lot of specific tactical issues that come with that from an information security perspective. Probably one of the biggest topics, though, that is rising now, again, in the beginning, there was a lot of discussion of business continuity and on secure business continuity. I'm beginning to see the rise in this as a term for the first time. Instead of just talking about BC, business continuity, companies are finally saying, what we need is to have an SBC plan, a secure business continuity plan that has embedded security aspects within it from its roots, as opposed to trying to tag on security in the end. But now towards all the discussions of reopening, of resuming operations, the focus has shifted away from secure BC to secure reopening, which will never be a term because hopefully we won't do this every year. But when you go to reestablishing operations in the workplace and bringing all of these work from home machines back into your business corporate network environments and back on the corporate Wi-Fi and back in direct contact with your LAN, there are so many questions and so many frank worries about what that's going to mean in terms of risk management, in terms of, I think a great analogy that I recently heard was, you've sent everyone out to play in random locations for a long time, just like when they were kids playing outside in the summertime. Everyone's going to come inside and their hands could be really dirty, and you really don't know what that's going to mean. And when in computer terms, how many really dirty computers are about to walk back into your office environment? And how do we handle that risk? How do we mitigate issues? How do we do the appropriate amounts of cleaning and sanitizing, and how do we ramp up our monitoring and our defenses to try to prevent long-term damage from this short-term wave? So that's pretty much the topic of the day right now, I think.
That's great. Jeff, Troy, anything to add?
Cool. Yeah, I had actually, I'm gonna tack on to what Kevin was talking about is, how dirty are those hands? I mean, in the type of work that I do and the types of things that I follow, we're seeing statistics anywhere between 3 and 5 times dirtier networks on the work from home networks. About 5 times more likely to have malware running around on your home networks that you're not necessarily aware of. So, I mean, obviously these corporate assets that are going to be connecting back into the network, we need to make sure that we've got procedures and processes in place to check those, to make sure, one, that they're updated, before they're able to really access any corporate data, corporate assets, and then make sure that, we're scanning it for viruses as well, because they're certainly much more likely to exist in the home networks than they are in the corporate networks.
This is Jeff. I'll add on. I think there's going to be an increased attention on economic efficiency when it comes to security issues, but IT issues, and really every issue. Look, I mean, you cannot have companies taking, 10, 20, 30, 40% revenue hits for various reasons and not have those companies start thinking about costs. And so, I think IT and security will, as everybody will, come under increased cost scrutiny. What that will mean is that efficiency of defense will certainly become an issue. How do we optimize security value per dollar spent? A lot of the last 15 years in security has been largely a random walk of tools, right? People buy tools for various unknown and unclear reasons, but more deliberate purchasing of tools, the concept of security value, security coverage, using something like MITRE ATT&CK to understand what problem am I solving with this tool? Do I have 7 other tools that are also solving the same problem, but nothing over here addressing, these problems? Did I implement 10% of a tool and then forget about the remaining 90% and buy 3 other tools to implement the 90% of the tool that I didn't decide to implement, or I ran out of time or budget to implement? So all those sorts of efficiency questions I think will be important. Also, I think there's going to be a real discussion about what should be done in-house in security versus what should be done by managed service providers of various kinds. Managed service providers, one can make arguments about, efficiencies of scale and specialization and all that sort of thing, as opposed to throwing in-house staff on things. The reality is every company is a little different. Some companies are more efficient doing things in-house. Some companies are more efficient outsourcing. Some tasks are more efficient outsourced. Some tasks are more efficient completed in-house. And I think those are going to be very, very material discussions here as everybody tries to stretch their dollars as we come out of this thing.
Great. Awesome. Thank you. Great input from all of you. And actually, you've all touched on a topic I want to lean just a little bit further into when we talk about business continuity, or now, Kevin, secure business continuity. I think that sort of says it, right? This whole movement, cybersecurity was already in the spotlight, but now it's really in the spotlight as more and more businesses from top to bottom have to think through this. And from our experience, I'll say from my experience, but I think from ours collectively, there's always been this tension between cybersecurity and the business and what the business wants to do and how we do it safely and securely, and even cybersecurity and IT, right, in a lot of cases. So I'd be curious to hear from all of you, because we have people on the call that are tactical and in the weeds in cybersecurity every day, all the way through business leaders of organizations. How is that tension going to change? Like, how do we navigate that whole concept that, Jeff, you were just talking about, which is we've got to do this and we've got to do more of it, and even more cost effectively than ever based on revenue drops. So, I'll kind of lob that out to you guys if anybody wants to jump on that grenade first. Give us your thoughts around how do we navigate that differently? What do those conversations sound like?
Yeah. I'll take a shot. I mean, look, as long as I've been in security, which is a pretty long time, there's always been tension in those relationships. Business people and many times IT people see security folks as the Department of No, professional parade rainers, whatever you want to call it, and to a certain extent, we security guys and gals have earned that, right? Security guys and gals often say, this is the right way to do it, and you're doing it the wrong way, and you're bad. And I have, air quotes on all of those things because none of those terms mean anything. I think it's really important for security people to answer the why is this something that we should be spending our time and dollars on question to IT people and to business people. There's been too much of the holier than thou, you're doing it wrong, right? But not enough of the here's the why. When you have a single factor VPN portal exposed to the internet, right? Here is what an attacker will do, right? They will go and download the breach databases. They will spray that portal, and they will most likely get some credentials. And then they'll have access to whatever that has access to. So don't just say, hey, you should use two-factor on this because two-factor is good, but explain, right, the why. When you're talking about something like local administrator access on machines, explain the why. When Mabel gets the phishing email that she eventually will get, right, the risk profile when Mabel has local admin is very different than when Mabel does not have local admin. Here's what will happen. So this, it ties back to this concept of offense-informed defense, which I think the business and the IT folks actually understand more than philosophical approaches. Here's the why. Here's why this is important. Here's the risk associated if we don't do these things, or if we do them in way A versus way B.
Yeah, I'm going to tag onto that with again my big my weapon of choice in that tension battle, if you will, is the idea of actually calculating out and presenting and walking through what cybersecurity ROI really looks like. Being able to, especially now, help companies understand how their dollars spent are really dollars invested. It's helpful to have real dollars and real ROI percentages that you can show, and scenarios to back them up, and real world examples and statistics that kind of frame and shape those stories. The good news is we never have any lack of real world stories. They're just millions of them that always can be chosen to fit a scenario to help try to understand in an industry for a particular type of company, in a particular situation, why this is so important now and why understanding the value of different aspects of cybersecurity spend is so very high versus its cost. So cyber ROI is critical. Being able to make that relatable and understandable in a narrative sense to the board of directors, to the senior executives, is right up there in importance. Otherwise, it's possible for the numbers to be just seen as, well, anybody can make up numbers. But when you bring all that together and bring it home, there's such a powerful story to be told, especially now, even in times of high tension and of budget cuts, because of the heightened risk. And risk is real, and the repercussions are real. So there's really powerful stories that can be told. The issue is just making sure that you have the expertise and have the background and have the participants on your team who can tell those stories and who can make it real for those in charge.
So I'm gonna refer back to a point that Jeff mentioned about efficiencies, and the budgets are going to be cut, and we're going to have to really start thinking about do I need to continue to pay for this particular tool or this particular vendor, or do I have the right controls and technologies in the right place, and am I actually getting the return on that investment for that? So I mean, this is where frameworks like MITRE ATT&CK are incredibly valuable. In understanding, one, what is my real threat? What does that profile look like? What does the profile of the threat actor that's interested in me or my type of enterprise or my type of industry, so that we can then take that understanding of that threat actor, be threat informed in how we're assessing gaps in controls, assessing do we have the right tools and technologies in place to handle things like, is someone going to be password spraying my single factor VPN? So those sorts of frameworks really do give us the ability to assess where we are from a control standpoint, a technology standpoint, a human resources standpoint. So MITRE ATT&CK is something that the Collaboratory spends a lot of energy talking about, how to operationalize it, how to think about where it applies in your business. And it all really starts from really trying to understand who that threat is. But we can then take that from a strategic perspective and really build our programs out, in an automated way, threat actor informed, and get to a place where we've got the right controls in the right place for the best bang for the buck there.
Great. And I'll just use this as an opportunity. I know some people joined late. If you do have questions, throw them in the Q&A box down there, and I'll begin to field them. But Troy, I'm gonna stay with you real quick and sort of pivot right off of that last piece you were talking about. In our second webinar, you showed us all some really cool stuff. I mean, you guys at the Collaboratory, you go so deep in this vulnerability management aspect of things, and the information you have access to and the way you're operationalizing that is so impressive with your tool. And you shared some things about, here's what's going on right now, right? Have you seen anything change just in the last couple of weeks in that landscape that's really notable to you, or anything that you would just bring up as a reminder on how the bad guys are sort of taking advantage of the current opportunities?
Yeah, so I mean, there's a number of ways that that we're tracking the bad guys or the threat actors are taking advantage of COVID-19 and everything that entails. I mean, as of right now, we're tracking somewhere between 12 and 15 different threat actors, threat actor campaigns, APTs that are actively operating under the cover of COVID-19. We're talking about organizations, like Charming Kitten. We're talking about just a number of them. They're all over the place. And the types of things that they are doing, it's really not crazy stuff. I mean, anytime we have a big event like this, whether it's a natural disaster or it's an economic shutdown or it's a pandemic, you can always assume that the way that these actors are going to come after you initially is going to be trying to impersonate NGOs or trying to impersonate the World Health Organization with phishing and spear phishing types of attacks. Some of the organizations that we represent and that we work with are right on the front lines of dealing with COVID-19. You've probably heard many of their names coming from the Rose Garden right now. So what we're actually seeing and what they're seeing are specific whaling attacks going after their executives. Because they're high profile, those executives' names are all over the news. Some of them have actually been standing in the Rose Garden, with the president. So that immediately makes them a viable target. It puts them out there. So, there's a number of things that in this particular environment where those executives are high profile now, it becomes trivial to figure out where those people live, and then potentially go and just sit outside of their house and try to see if we can get into their wireless networks. So we have to think about these sorts of attack vectors in the attack surface that's being offered to those types of threat actors when we put those executives up front like that. So yeah, I mean, nearly everything under the sun, nothing's new under the sun here. These threat actors are able to very quickly retool at least their campaigns. They're able to spin up infrastructure and tear it down very quickly, and try to mimic and come under the cover of COVID-19. That's really no different. One of the other things I want to call out is, as everybody, quickly shifted to working from home, automatically there was a rise in use of collaboration tools, Teams, Zoom. We know that if you paid attention to any technology, news or reporting, one of the first things that happened was Zoom was targeted all over the place. We are now seeing a bunch of credential dumps for Zoom credentials that are hidden in the dark web. So, I mean, as the workforce shifts, the threat actors and the ways that they follow those shifts, that never changes. They're going to continue to do that. So.
Great. Thanks for those comments, Troy. Really appreciate that. So Jeff and Kevin, we touched on this a little bit earlier, but I'm going to lean into you guys here a little bit. Kevin gave us the kids are out playing dirty hands. We're bringing dirty machines back into the workplace now. So, you guys are chief security officers for your companies and many others in a de facto sense. How do we get everybody back to the workplace? And whatever everybody is, we can get into the whole percentage that stays remote, but how do we get people back safe and secure? What's the game plan that needs to be executed there?
Well, there's a good news, bad news when it comes to how that all works. The good news is if you already had a really well-structured cybersecurity program in place that was covering the majority of your cyber controls, that had programmatics, that had some monitoring and metrics in place for making sure that things are done, and had planned for certain business continuity events, even if they weren't pandemics, but in general, it puts you in a pretty good position now to be able to have responded flexibly. Very similar to how Troy just mentioned how the bad guys can be really dynamic and retool and flexible and in their attack patterns and attack paths for different attack surfaces when world conditions change. Having a really well-structured cyber program allows you to defensively and somewhat offensively retool and redirect so that you can shift to a whole nother work dynamic like we have here. So the good news is if you went in with a pretty good structure in place with some expertise, with the tools, with a balanced multidimensional approach to your security, you're probably going to be in a fairly good position to start reentry and to look at all of the risks that are accompanying it with some of the right risks managed appropriately. The key will be, of course, having expertise on board and planning, not just waiting and starting to do it and then seeing and reacting, but planning and looking at all the key factors and all the key risks, leveraging your internal personnel, getting help from outside, from folks like on this webinar, to make sure that you plan appropriately and mitigate as many risks as you can. So on the flip side of that, the bad news is if you went into this without a very strong cybersecurity posture, your posture just got, what you did have has been cut off at the knees, and you are at an amplified level of risk right now. It's not a pretty thing to have to say, but it is absolutely true. A lot of companies that, for example, had to go out and buy VPN immediately when this happened because they just couldn't do it and had to immediately go and find a solution for collaboration because they didn't have it and cobble together results. And the last thing on their mind was security. Your risk could not be higher than over this next few weeks as you try to unwind those operations and may not have cyber risk management on the table. So the right answer, get help. plan now for those operations, get support, look at things like risk, like tech, human factors, operations, reach out to people like on this call and begin to plan now while you still can, before beginning to return to quote unquote normal operations.
Yeah, so if I could hop in real quick, just to add on to a point that you made about, you know, those VPNs that are being cobbled together, you know, don't forget that they're out there when you stop using them, right?
What a great call.
Yeah, I mean, if you've got single factor running on that VPN, or you've got some API that you know, endpoint that you had to stand up to make something work, when you get back to normal operations, please don't forget that those things are there, because the attack surface remains. Okay. So now's probably a good time to start thinking about how do we secure those things that we had to put in place very quickly.
Jeff, I'll add one thing. Don't forget the policy issues here as well. So work from home and school from home have necessitated people installing things and using computers in ways that were not, you know, previously considered. Not everybody has a house full of, you know, 2 or 3 or 4 computers. A lot of people, you know, out of necessity, kids are using a parent's computer for school, remote schooling. That's not going to change. A lot of school systems are thinking about summer school. There's stuff going on that kids are going to need to be on computers for the foreseeable future, and it's probably reasonable to expect that some of those computers are going to be parents' work computers.
Good, great comments. Okay. So we're getting close to time here, so I'm going to go around the horn real quick with the 3 of you, and then I'm going to invite Ben in with a secondary question. But you know, if there was one thing coming out of all of this, if there's just one thing you would want everybody to hear and take away from the situation that we're navigating through from a cybersecurity standpoint, what would that thing be? Kevin, I'll start with you.
Yeah, the one thing would be, and hopefully it's obvious to most companies in the world, business continuity really matters. A lot of places always sort of considered it compliance where it sits on a shelf. BC matters, and now we're going to see a lot more over the next 6 months to a year. Secure business continuity matters, as we see, unfortunately, some of the ramifications of turning on BC plans that may or may not have been secure. SBC is going to become the name of the game. That's, I think, the biggest takeaway is not only plan, but plan in a secure enterprise manner.
Okay, good. Thanks.
I'll throw in, you know, in security, blocking and tackling. It's always the basics. Do your patching right, do your credentialing right. The bad guys are abusing those things right now. But if you have a solid credentialing and identity and access management program, you're going to be immune to a lot of immune is the wrong word. You'll have reduced risk associated with what the bad guys are doing most commonly. If you've got a handle on patching, you know, in your remote workforce, you'll reduce your risk associated with bad guys scanning for known vulnerabilities. Those are how we get hurt right now. Always have been, always will be.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the one thing that I would call out is, you know, we're talking about secure business continuity is in blocking and tackling. The best way to test yourself in these sorts of areas is to exercise the tabletops, right? Tabletop pandemic planning, tabletop what happens if everybody has to go work from home, tabletop exercises around, gosh, I don't know, particular threat actors that are you know, interested in me. I mean, the more you exercise and practice this stuff, the better you're going to be on game day. All right. So if you've not engaged in some sort of wargaming or tabletopping, testing your policies, your procedures, your interactions, now's probably the time to figure out how to start doing it.
Awesome. Great. Thank you, guys. So Ben, I'm going to invite you in here, and I know a lot of the folks on the call know you, some may not, but you know, Ben, first, thank you. You've been such a champion of this series and idea generator behind it. So on behalf of everyone, I want to say a special thanks to you for putting some mojo behind this and getting us all rallied around it. But you have such a wide, strong network of IT leaders that you're in touch with all the time. you know, through various means and platforms and a lot of the work that you do in the area. I'd be curious to hear from you, what's on the mind of those IT leaders right now? And yeah, maybe cyber, you can lean into that, but really anything goes. What are you hearing? What are they saying, thinking, and talking about right now?
Well, first of all, Jason, thanks for the kind words. I trust the 50 my mom gave you, it will be enough for this in future sessions. Well, I'm hearing a couple things. I think depending on the industry I'm talking to, you know, for example, retail or healthcare, their economic situation is significantly different than perhaps some other folks that have not suffered, that have not had bear as much of impact. That being said, you know, in general, we're seeing some, you know, clearly that projects that were put on for this year, many have stopped or slowed down. In some industries, only investments that are going to happen are things that have to do to keep the bus running. No forward-looking kind of things. We're seeing that there's going to be a shakeout of businesses out there. I had a conversation with a CIO yesterday, and they indicated that they use certain SaaS companies, and some of the mid-sized SaaS companies, they're not going to be around. And so there's going to be a disruption associated with the kind of services and companies that people are using for SaaS, which is going to create some turmoil. I guess the overriding factor is there's going to be significant economic pressures that folks are challenging it where, given I still have to do all the things I'm going to do, how do I restart in a smart way? And how do I figure out what things I should be spending my money on for this year? And that's where I think forums like this are very helpful to help separate all the information and get some insight from it.
Awesome. Thanks for those comments. I really appreciate it, Ben. Kevin, Jeff, Troy, Ben, thanks so much for all of your insight over the last 4 weeks on this awesome topic. Petra, thank you for all the great work you do preparing for these. And thanks to everybody for joining us today on behalf of Vernovis and the Columbus Collaboratory. We greatly value and appreciate your interest in this. Look forward for some future communication on some upcoming webinars and another series that we're thinking about launching here soon around topics other than cybersecurity, future of work, artificial intelligence, automation, some of those types of things. So we look forward to being with you again soon. Thanks to everyone. Have a great day. We'll see ya.
Take care. Thanks, Jason.